Chairman Latta and Ranking Member Matsui for bringing together this hearing, and to our FCC commissioners for giving your time to be here today. As we all know, access to broadband has become a critical need, not just a want. The lack of broadband access has hit hard, particularly in my district in Pennsylvania 13, as our rural residents and farmers face increasingly unmanageable digital divide. We need to ensure that all Americans are able to connect to the internet, regardless of what town or what community or what geographic divides are presented to them. Chairwoman Rosenworcel, NTIA was given $42.45 billion for broadband equity access and development, the BEAD program, which is aimed to give grants to communities to build broadband networks, specifically in unserved areas. Would you please discuss how your agency is working with NTIA to ensure that this program is successful in the rural areas that I serve?
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, we're making a historic commitment to closing the digital divide in this country. $42 billion to make sure networks reach rural communities is a big deal. We've got to make sure it's spent in the right places. That's why we've developed our nation's broadband map, which is the most granular accounting of where service is and is not in our nation's history. And quite literally, every day we are on the phone and working with NTIA to make sure they understand that map, understand its nuances, understand the trends we're seeing, because we want all of our data to inform their allocation in the BEAD program.
And to that point, the allocation date for BEAD funding is June 30th. It's right around the corner. Currently, my state of Pennsylvania still has around 5,000 challenges that were submitted by the initial January deadline that have yet to be adjudicated. Would you please describe how the FCC adjudicated these challenges submitted during the challenge process, and will you be able to adjudicate those remaining 5,000 Pennsylvania challenges prior to this upcoming June 30th deadline?
So the most important thing to know is that we take in challenges every day, every month, every year. And then under the law, there are certain time periods in which we can resolve them. FCC rules give 60 days for a carrier to look at those challenges, 60 days to resolve them with the customer, and then Congress threw another 90 days on top of that in the bipartisan infrastructure law. So this is the time frame in which we resolve availability challenges. Now, that being said, every time we can resolve them earlier, we do so, and every time we resolve challenges, we update our map very, very shortly thereafter, and we call our colleagues at NTIA. With respect to what you're talking about in Pennsylvania, I'd be happy to have my team follow up with you offline so you know just where everything stands.
Thank you. That June 30th deadline with those 5,000 continued unadjudicated issues to be resolved, I thank you for that follow-up. We know that the FCC's campaign to advertise the ACP has begun. We also know that the program will run out of funding early next year. Chairwoman Rosenworcel, is it responsible to do this before Congress decides the future of the program?
Working with my colleagues on a bipartisan basis, we committed to doing more outreach with this program. That was also a recommendation from the GAO. So we set aside a small amount of money to do it, and then we followed federal contracting procedures and grant procedures to get those dollars out. We are putting a premium on everyone who's received funds, using them as soon as possible to make sure that there's no conflict with an appropriation or coming appropriation from Congress.
Commissioner Carr, I congratulate you for your boots-on-the-ground approach as we look to roll out additional rural broadband. You are acutely aware of how the lack of internet access negatively affects rural Americans. Students and their learning have been left behind. Businesses suffer without access to expanding e-commerce. Farmers are unable to utilize precision agriculture to more effectively produce food for America. And patients and doctors cannot access the ability to heal from home with telemedicine. Commissioner Carr, do you feel that the FCC recognizes the impact of the digital divide on rural America, and are all steps being taken to address this from the FCC perch?
I do think so. I think we fundamentally agree that we have to do more to end the digital divide. And we've done a lot, but there's more to be done on infrastructure. As I mentioned, I think there's a lot more we could do on sort of meat and potato infrastructure reforms. Again, we have all of these BEAD dollars coming out the door, $42 billion. If we don't streamline permitting and we're just spending this additional money, we're effectively jumping on the gas and the brakes at the same time. So we need to address federal lands. That probably requires some congressional action. We need to take a look at railroad crossings, which continue to be a big barrier to broadband bills. There's some legislation here that could do that. I think we should take some of the shot clocks and fee reforms that we apply to small cells and look at applying those to wired infrastructure. If we can do that at the FCC, which I think we can, we could accelerate these rural builds even faster.
I see my time is expiring. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thanks to all the witnesses